Tonight, Superboy brings back a throwaway character, just to throw him away all over again. Rob Liefeld finds new ways to disappoint me with his Deathstroke run. And the Ravagers spends the entire issue with majority of its characters naked. It's teenage characters. Someone call the cops. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 45 of the Not-So-New 52. I am your host, and this is a weird week in terms of which books are coming out. Now, I tend to structure this show where I review comics family by family. I go Batman family, Superman family, Green Lantern, Justice League, The Edge, Young Justice, and the S.H.A.D.E, and then followed up by whatever miniseries are coming out. This week does not have any Green Lantern or any Justice League, and it only has one Superman book. Now, that's normal, but that means that everything is concentrated in just 4 families, and that's very strange to happen, like, ever. I know this is something only I care about, but I have to fill this opening bit with something because I can't just immediately get into books. But how about we go ahead and get into books? So we have this week 14 comics, including the number 11 issues of Batman, Batman and Robin, Batgirl, Superboy, Deathstroke, Grifter, Suicide Squad, Legion Lost, Demon Knights, Frankenstein, Resurrection Man, and Swamp Thing. Additionally, we have the number 3 issue of the Ravagers and the number 10 issue of the S.H.A.D.E. Additionally, one last thing before we actually get into comics for reals now. For anyone listening on the audio version of this, I'm sorry, you're missing out, because the video version, throughout this show, you're just going to see my cat pop up, because I recorded these things before I recorded this intro, and my cat was just relaxing on my desk, and I didn't have the heart to move it. So, say hi to my cat. My God, I am lonely. Let's get into Batman. Batman number 11, written by Scott Snyder, art by Greg Capullo. Last issue we left off with basically the beginning of the fight scene between Lincoln March, aka Owlman, and Batman, and the whole thing of, oh, I'm actually your secret brother you didn't know about. And then this issue is basically just an extended fight scene / monologue from Lincoln saying, Bruce, you have no idea how hard my life was. Like, everything sucked all the time, and then the Court of Owls came around, and they were gonna, like, make me the heir to the Waynes because you disappeared to do your Batman thing, like, training. But then as soon as they were gonna do their plan, you showed back up, and you ruined everything, and now there's only enough room for one Wayne in town. And throughout this whole fight, it's just basically Lincoln is able to fly in his Owlman suit, and he just grabs Batman with a tether wire and just starts knocking him into buildings all over Gotham until finally he flies all the way up to a passing by airliner and just like throws him into the turbine of the plane, and he's like, all right, well, you're dead now. And then Batman, of course, he manages to grab on to the rim of it. He's not going in yet. And it turns out he planted an explosive on Lincoln's back during their whole fight. So it goes off. He starts plowing the ground. Batman pulls himself out of the turbine, and like people on the plane are like, what in the hell is going on out there? But Batman, he's so weak, he just like falls off the plane. He doesn't have anything like in order to grab onto or anything like that. He's miles and miles above the city, and he just starts coming down, and he's like, well, this is it. Goodbye, Gotham. You look so pretty. But then he's like, all right, I guess I can't actually give up. So he uses a high-velocity bat rope, which he just straight up calls bat rope, and it grabs onto a construction building, his main tower that he was building for the Gotham Rejuvenation Project, and uses it to like swing his way into the tower. And of course, he is badly, badly injured. But of course, Lincoln March survives, and he just picks up Batman, and he's like, dear God, man, you really are pushing for this. All right, well, here's the deal. I'm going to destroy this tower, this symbol of Gotham that you've come to love so much. And he starts throwing out like sticky grenades all over the building. And he's like, you're going to die in the wreckage, and I'm going to die with you. But because I've got the Talon serum, I'm just going to come right back to life. So I will come and claim Gotham as my own. I am Gotham's... If I can't be Gotham's future, I will at least be its secret past. To which Batman's like, yeah, you are the past, Lincoln. And he shoves his thumbs into Lincoln's eyes and starts outrunning the explosions. To which Lincoln is just like, you may have gotten away this time, but I am undead. I will be back. Hardy har har. And the whole tower just starts collapsing down on Batman. And we see some time has passed, at least a day or two, and Bruce is recuperating. He's talking to Jim Gordon saying like, yeah, no, it sucks my tower went down, but luckily nobody was injured. So that's a thing. Anyway, Dick Grayson's here. I'm going to talk to him now. And Dick showed up because... I don't know, Bruce needed someone to talk to in this scene. Technically, Dick wanted to punch Bruce in the face for Bruce punching him in the face like 4 issues ago. And we just get the wrap up on how everything stood. Batman is still investigating the Court of Owls, but he literally can't find much of a trace of anything, and they have vast amounts of resources. All of the Talons are currently in cryogenic sleep underneath Blackgate Prison. And the big thing, is it possible that Lincoln March was actually Bruce Wayne's brother? To which Bruce says, my mother gave premature birth to a son after a car accident. He lived for 1 night in this hospital and then passed away. I truly believe that is what happened. However, at Mercy Hospital, like just down the street, there was a John Doe baby basically left there a week after the supposed death. And my mother did go and visit that orphanage, like, very frequently after that time period. So there's a lot of balls up in the air. But Batman basically says to Dick, like, yes, there's a lot of evidence to support his side. However, I truly believe in my parents, and I truly believe that that is not what would happen. So he's shutting out that Lincoln March could ever possibly be his brother. And then they say, yes, you know, the Court of Owls is still out there, but we will be there, and I'm realizing Gotham is not just Batman's. It's something more, something greater. It's, you know, whatever. But he will be there to protect it. And then we get one final page of Gotham reflected in Bruce's eyes. And then end of arc. Finally, the end of the Court of Owls stuff. I enjoyed it. I mean, this issue specifically and the arc as a whole, I think it was a very, you know, it is... Court of Owls is one of those things that I feel has the potential to be moved into classic Bat villain territory. The only complaint I really have for this one is that the first half of the issue, it just kind of felt like, okay, Lincoln is so much stronger than Batman, and he's just going to toss him around for a while. And then we finally get up to like the airplane thing. Batman gets the upper hand. And then we go right back into Lincoln is so much stronger than Batman, and he's just going to toss him around for a while. Like, it just, I don't know. I know it was two separate sides and two things, but it just felt to me like the whole going up to the airplane and doing whatever is just because Scott Snyder really wanted Batman to, like, see Gotham from above and, like, come down on it, which, okay, I guess, but it just, I don't know. It struck me as, it was a weird transition of Lincoln was beating him, he got the one up on Lincoln, and then they did the exact same thing again, like beat for beat. So that's my only real qualm with it. Art is fantastic. I really do enjoy the way they laid out half these pages. It's solid the whole way through. So overall, I'm going to give this one I'm going to say an 8.5. I think as a capper, it sets up, okay, Lincoln can still be out there, Court of Owls can still be out there, but it doesn't feel cheap, like we didn't get the end to a story. Like, they do both feel like they can still be out there, and it feels like a resolution still. So yeah, 8.5 for that, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Scott Snyder does next. Batman and Robin number 11, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Patrick Gleason. Last issue left off with Robin basically saying he's going to kick all the Robins' butts. He did so to Tim Drake. And then there's another plot going on of a guy named Terminus who is very upset with Batman, and he has a nuclear missile. Okay, cool, great. So this issue picks up with Red Hood coming back to a safe house that he has in Gotham. And he's like, oh boy, I really need to go to bed. And as he pulls off the covers of the bed, there's a crowbar waiting for him. And this is just the distraction that Damian needed to start kicking Red Hood's butt. And what follows is like 4 solid pages of just them going back and forth with Damian being like, you're the only Robin who like straight up died at the hands of a villain for like a long time. You are definitely not a good Robin. And Jason just comes back and says, you're not even a Wayne, dude. Like, you kill a bunch of people. You are an Al Ghul through and through, and you are not fit to be here. But regardless, they're sword fighting for a while, and then Damian just punches Jason in the throat and steals his Red Hood mask and leaves and calls it a victory. And Jason is super pissed off about that. So then we get to the main plot of the story, which is the Terminus thing. And those 4, like, people who were affected by Batman, specifically focusing a lot on the one who has a batarang, like, through his head, so he just says random crap all the time. Like, how about a piggyback ride? I forgot to floss today. You stinking cop. Okay. Anyway, they're going around to just a whole bunch of different people. I think they might be focusing on cops, but it's genuinely a bunch of people, and they're branding them in the chest with Batman symbols. So there are currently at least 22 victims in the hospital, and Jim goes up on the roof, talks to Batman, Robin's next to him, and they show him all the stuff, and it's like, we have no idea who's doing this, but they keep on coming in. So we are currently, like, everyone's on curfew, everyone's locked down. Got to figure out what's going on tonight, though. And then we see Terminus is talking to his goons and saying, like, all right, you guys spreading around the bat pain with everybody? And he's like, yeah, we sure are, boss. How many are we doing this for? And he's like, thousands if you can. Do it to everybody you can find. And then we see that the one who had, like, 3 different faces or something like that apparently has some level of Clayface powers. This was not established before, but he does. So he's, able to brand people even faster. He's not using it to, like, kill people. They're all just branding people. So anyway, Batman and Robin come up against them, and they start fighting. So one of them shoots, like, a brand into Batman, so obviously his armor, but his chest is on fire for the rest of the fight. And then Damian gets up to one of them, and it's just like, oh yeah, no, we'll take him out, but maybe we should add a little bit of pain to the list. And then Bruce is like, hey, did you forget the entire last arc? And he's like, no, I remember it. And he tossed away the branding knife. So Batman then takes the a truck that they were, like, around, and he loads up all the victims inside of the truck. And we see Terminus is watching this, and he's like, aha, his city is finally branded. This is the end of him and me. And he shoots himself in the chest with something that causes him extreme pain, but he was also literally melting, so my guess is it was necessary. So then we see that Batman's delivered all these people to the hospital, and they're like, okay, here's the thing. It's almost dawn, but I still got to be out there. I got to find these guys and shut them down. This is straight up terrorism. Like, we just got to deal. So they're picking up on satellites and stuff like that. They're finding, like, the center of the thing, and Batman's like, we have to take back my symbol. It's a symbol of hope for these people. Fear is only for the criminals. We got to do this right. And we see that there's, on all the skyscrapers in Gotham, the bat symbol just burning on all the buildings. And Batman's just standing there just yelling out, like, leave my city alone! I'm the one you want! Get out here, you cowards! And finally they get a lock on a few of them up on top of one of the rooftops. And he's like, all right, come and get me, I'm right here. And then the voice of Terminus speaks out. He's like, oh yeah, Batman, don't worry. It's time for you to reap what you sow. And he breaks through the bottom of where they were standing in a giant, like, mech suit that also has bat branding. So, yeah, that's a thing. I'm okay with the Damian fighting Jason bit. It was, it's the B plot, but it's still there. I'm okay with it. I'm glad they didn't interrupt the middle of, like, this citywide huge thing just to have that. They had it happen before all that happened. Good with that. The initial stuff of the people being branded, the one who, like, can't control those little inner thoughts and just splurts them out, he's really distracting as a person. Like, one of them is just a woman. One of them is a guy who got kicked in the face He's a big guy, though. And then the last one apparently has Clayface powers. This dude is like scrawny and small, and he just has a battering lodged in his head, and he just says stuff. I don't feel like he's A-grade material, but he was the one that was getting like the most focus, and I think it's mainly just because he's fun to write, where you can just have him say random crap throughout. So it felt a little bit silly. And then we got to the part where he's like, stop messing with my city! Come out, you cowards! I know it was meant to be like this grumble, like this roar of like, come and get me, but I didn't read it like that. I read it like, stop it! You're being mean! And that also felt silly. So overall, it didn't feel like... It had these visuals that seemed like they were supposed to be like, dear God, this city is falling. But because of like the way it was written, I just thought it was a bit silly. So I don't think that's what was intended. I gotta lower the score a little bit on that. So I'll go ahead and give it a 7. It's still good. It's not bad, but like this had the potential to be like a badass or like Batman's taking back his symbol. And in the end, all I got was I forgot to floss today in the middle of a guy getting branded. Like, it's silly. Batgirl number 11, written by Gail, Simone, art by Ardian, Syaf. Last issue we left off with Batgirl being surrounded by a group of goons, with their leader being called Nightfall, and they kill criminals. This issue picks up with literally introductions where Nightfall's like, hi, I'm Nightfall. This is Catharsis. She has wings and a metal bat. This is Bleak Mychael. He secretes acid from his skin. And over there on the right is Bonebreaker. She's big and strong. Anyway, Batgirl, we don't want to hurt you. We want you to join us because we kill criminals and we're not about giving anybody any second chances and whatever. Would you like to join us? And Batgirl says no. And so immediately Nightfall's like, fair enough. Beat her up. So they actually, she says kill her directly. So regardless, the fight scene happens. It's your standard typical like, oh man, I got to take out each one of them via their own special thing or whatever. And they keep on getting back up. They keep on going back and fighting some more until finally Bonebreaker gets back up, grabs Barbara by the throat, and she goes, uh-oh. Then we cut over to the B plot, which Alicia and James Gordon Jr. are, I guess, getting back from a date. They're at Alicia's apartment, and she's like, so, do you want to maybe come in? And he's like, I don't know, is your roommate home? He's like, Barbara? Nah, she's out at all hours of the night. And he's like, think I'll pass then. It was a great time, though, but I want our first night together to be something special, something you'll never forget. Anyway, I got you something. It's out in my car. And he goes out to the car. Alicia's drunk, by the way. I don't know if I said that. But when he comes back in, he has a cat, a long-hair Siamese cat. And she's like, oh, my God, thank you so much. And he's like, it already has a name. The name is Alaska, which, if you remember, was the name of Barbara's childhood cat. James killed. Okay. Anyway, so Barbara's being choked out, and Nightfall steps up with a knife in hand, and it's just like, well, you were always helpless in this situation. You could never win, Batgirl. This city has seen too much horror in its time. Goodbye. And is about to plunge the knife into Batgirl's chest. Detective McKenna shows up, gun drawn, and it's just like, Nightfall, you need to step down. And then, as it turns out, McKenna is 2,000% sure that Nightfall is, what's her name? The rich one. I'll get to her name in a second. Charisse Carnes, there it is the rich one from last issue. Which, yeah, fair bet, but we haven't seen the face yet, so I'm still expecting a heel turn. Anyway, so she's like, I will shoot you, McKenna. And she's like, just like you did before, or at least tried to. And she's like, oh, I'm better now. But anyway, let Batgirl go. And so they just do, and then say, don't follow us, to which Nightfall says, like, okay. And all the goons are like, seriously? They're not gonna, okay, sure, whatever. So they all go downstairs, hop in the car, and drive home. And basically we get the explanation on, like, what was Charisse Carnes' thing? And apparently her story was that her family bought some land that was like garbage, literal garbage, and they built it up to be some extra thing, made a huge amount of money off of it, and then her parents and her brother were all killed brutally by, as she says, someone who sat there, like, made her watch it happen for 3 straight hours. The prosecutors pointed out that's, like, stupid, and there's no trace of anyone else coming in, so it was definitely her. So she got put in Arkham. She was just 18 years old, and she was very, shy and scared, but, like, she followed the rules. She did everything fine. But then there was a breakout at Arkham, and at this point they've arrived back at McKenna's apartment, and Batgirl's getting first aid for an acid burn she got on her arm. But then it was a breakout at Arkham, and Charisse was forced to watch as the inmates in Arkham took a bunch of cops hostage, and they started torturing the cops right outside her cell for 2 straight hours. So whether or not it happened before, this one definitely happened. And Batgirl's making some deductions, looking around the apartment, being like, there's only 1 beer bottle here, but she has pictures of herself and a man, and there's a whole bunch of supercomputers here, and she starts prying into McKenna's personal life, to which McKenna then pulls the gun on Batgirl and says, like, all right, who do you work for? Are you with DEO, Medusa? What's going on here? Batgirl, like, takes the gun away and almost breaks her arm, and she's like, all right, tell me what's going on, detective. And then the detective explains how back during that night at Arkham, she swapped places with a SWAT officer that was about to go in because one of the hostages in Arkham was her husband. And as she made her way in and finally got to the part where McKenna was, or Charisse was, she found her husband being with a gun to his head from an inmate. And the inmate's like, you take 1 step closer, I'm going to blow his brains out. And she froze up, much like she froze up before. And in freezing up, she got her own husband killed. And so, bit of pity there. But regardless, Charisse apparently approached her later on, talked about her plans of doing evil things and stuff like that. And someone, I'll just say here, when she was released on appeal under suspicion of jury tampering, she contacted me, like she's done with dozens of cops and councilmen and judges, and there's something else, someone in your organization. So there's a Bat family member who is under suspicion of working with this person, and immediately we cut over to Batwoman, who is sitting outside of Melody's house saying, like, confirmed, they're both inside, I'm going in, to someone on a phone. It's fine, it's good, it's well drawn. I think the introductions in the beginning, it felt earned enough. It was strange until you got to the point where it's like, oh, but we want to work with you, Batgirl. But then the fact that Nightfall took the immediate, like, no to fair enough, kill her. I don't know. It just seemed like the offer to have her work with him was never going to actually be a thing because they just needed some reason to get out the introductions. Anyway, minor nitpicks. I did like it overall. It's not the best issue. I do like McKenna getting a bit more characterization here. Not sure how I feel about the Bat family member thing. Because Batwoman in her own book has got her own, like, being forced to do things against her will. So maybe not. We'll see how it goes. But I'm going to go ahead and give this one I'll give it a 7. It's okay. It's fine. It's nothing standout, but it's also nothing harmful either. It's just an okay book and an okay arc in general. Superboy, number 11, written by Scott Lobdell, art by R.B. Silva. Last issue was, once again, like a 2-parter. They were on an island, and then it went to Teen Titans, and genuinely, it doesn't matter to this at all. So this issue picks up with Superboy hanging out in his new swanky-ass apartment with Bunker, and apparently he just talked to some, like, rich millionaire lady who uses this as a storage unit for all of her stuff, and so it's just loaded up with, like, artwork and stuff like that. And Bunker is super impressed. And Superboy's using his telekinetic powers to just swirl around a couple $100 bills. And Bunker's like, why are you doing that? And he's like, well, I gotta do something with the money. And then he takes him to this little crawl space room where inside is this massive, like, warehouse-sized room filled with cash. And Superboy's like, I borrowed it. And Bunker's like, you borrowed it? And he's like, yeah, I figured I needed money in order to do things, so I took it from some banks. Don't worry, I'll give it back. And Bunker's like, dude, you're gonna go to jail, man. We're supposed to be heroes. What in the heck? So Bunker's just trying to clear his head. He's like, maybe we should get out of here because I feel like the feds are going to be knocking down our door any second. So they go out for a walk, and they're talking about like, hey, Superboy, you don't really have any real experiences, do you? Everything you know you've just like read about. Maybe we should get you some experiences. So they're talking about like what the S symbol means and like how there's someone out there who uses that symbol, and Bunker specifically says, now I think, and this is an unpopular opinion, that Superman's the greatest hero of them all. And I have to counter with, that's an unpopular opinion? Okay. So they stop by a tattoo shop, and Bunker's like, oh, I'll show you all the cool things you can do. And we see he got a tattoo of a purple brick on his like lower ribs. And then Superboy decides to get the Superman S tattooed onto his bicep. So that's there now. Anyway, they're leaving the tattoo shop, and a giant robot is attacking the city. And so Superboy and Bunker get in their costumes and head over to fight it. And it turns out that this robot, and I had to actually go back and double check this, was the robot who popped up in like issue 3 or 4 of Teen Titans that had the ability to just absorb a bunch of stuff and then make people forget about him. Because he made Tim Drake just completely forget about him. And his name is Demetrius, I think. Something like that. So, this makes that entire thing seem completely pointless. So he's huge. He's like almost like Godzilla sized pretty much. He's just picking up cars and like, I must absorb more and more. And Superboy's like, hey, how about you don't? And he's like, I'm going to keep doing it anyway. And he's like, all right, well, punchy time. So he punches Demetrius down, and then all the pieces start reassembling themselves even bigger now that there's some cars that he absorbed as well. And then he's like, oh, don't you understand? It is my right to absorb them into my collective. And then Superboy is almost absorbed by Demetrius, but he uses his telekinetic powers to basically rip everything off of his core, like, person underneath. And then we see Demetrius is just this weird, like, half-robot man. And they do the whole goddamn thing of, like, you don't understand what it's like, Superboy, to be an outsider, to not be understood. To which Superboy's like, I think I do understand. So anyway, they almost have a connection, and like Demetrius reaches out, touches Superboy, and then tries to absorb him again. To which Superboy then just punches him really hard and theoretically shatters him to a whole bunch of pieces. And Bunker's like, dude, what if he just reassembles himself again? He's like, oh, sorry, I wasn't thinking about that. Anyway, cops are showing up, we should go. And then they have a laugh that this is what hero work is. So in the Teen Titans story, he was just able to make Tim Drake forget about him just because that was a thing. He was just, oh, I'm going to remove this from your memories. And Tim's like, you can do that? And Demetrius says, sure. And then they never got back to him. And now he pops up here and he doesn't have those mental powers. And he just is a big guy who absorbs stuff, which honest to God makes me think that first Teen Titans appearance, he was like starting to write that character and was like, wait, I think I could have a moment with Superboy later. So I'm just going to like make it so that nobody even knows this guy is here, even after I already started writing him. And I'm like, no, Scott, stop it. Okay, overall, on this sense of this issue, what gets established, Superboy has a tattoo now of the Superman crest, and he has a swanky-ass apartment. And Tim did offer to let Superboy stay in the Teen Titans, penthouse. But he was like, nah, I still feel like I'm still earning your guys' trust, and that would just be weird. So, yeah, there's that. Overall, completely missable issue. There's nothing. Like, the only thing you're getting from it is if you read Teen Titans and were like, hey, whatever happened to that mind-controlling robot guy? Turns out, not much of anything. And they are still leaving the door open for him to show up again. So overall, I'm going to give this one I give it a 5.5. It's not good. It's there. It's not offensive, but it's not good. So Take of that what you will. I don't know. Deathstroke number 11, written and art by Rob Liefeld. Last issue we left off with Lobo going back to his ship and seemingly going to do something. And then he said, soon, Sheba, we will finally be reunited. Deathstroke and the gang also find out that this is a thing going on. So this issue opens up and it's literally just like a recap of the last 3 issues, or 2 issues even. It's just like, okay, here's who all of our characters are. The Omegas, we got Zealot, we got me and my issues because I'm not cool anymore. And we're arriving at this ship where Lobo theoretically is. And then like Deathstroke's like, all right, Zealot, take us down. And then they stop everything for 4 pages for Zealot to specifically say, before I do, Deathstroke, let's go over the entire history of Lobo. But not even the entire history of Lobo, just the parts that matter to the characters in the story. And apparently what happened is Lobo had a woman named Sheba, and he didn't care for not nobody, not no how, but his fellow Zarnian Sheba, he was totally in on. And they would capture and enslave homeworlds and sell them to the Citadel. And apparently he captured the homeworlds of the planets of the parents of the Omegas. And Sheba and them were, a team or whatever. But then one day, the ship crashed on Earth. Lobo was unconscious. Sheba was not anywhere to be found. The rest of the parents of the Omegas broke out and just started having families on Earth. And then eventually the government tracked down the kids, which then were taken to shelter, which became the Omegas. Okay? You see, I explained that to you. This book took significantly longer to do it. So anyway, they break into Lobo's ship, but break-in is a strong word because the front door is literally wide open. And inside, Lobo's like, all right, my ship's in good shape, barely a scratch. I'm powering up via the core of the Earth, and then I'm going to blow up this rock. And also, I'm going to go find Sheba on my space hog. And they show he has a motorcycle. So then the gang breaks in, and they're like, okay, let's all span out, see if we can find Lobo, but be careful. But before they can do literally anything, Lobo jumps them. And just an extended fight scene comes in where he just beats the crap out of literally every one of them while saying like, finally I get to fight another one of your species again. It's been too long. And he does it like 4 times. So then at a certain point, Deathstroke is laying down some hits and he's like, yes, I can do this. I can beat him. Then Lobo gets some hits in as well. And he's like, I just have to withstand this. I have to tire him out. I know I can endure longer than him. And he lists off the powers of Lobo, which are like super strength, genius level intellect, super senses. But he's like, he's still mortal or whatever. So he unloads some guns in Lobo's face and then pulls out 2 thermal detonators, one of which is strong enough to like completely destroy an elephant. So 2 should be no problem in taking down this guy. And they go off and he's still standing because he has an extreme regenerative factor and pretty much invincibility. And Deathstroke realizes that as Lobo starts beating the ever-loving crap out of Deathstroke, like actually breaking off his mask. And Lobo is telling him, like, hey, you've got nth metal armor on. I'm going to take that from you, and I'm going to sell it for a whole lot. Try not to bleed all over it. And then Deathstroke's like, I should have known that this was my final mission, that this would be my last contract, but at least I'm going out in a blaze of glory. And then we see Lobo still threatening to blow up the planet. I don't think it's very hard to come up with an issue that I feel is truly unnecessary, because at the very least you could say character development. And yes, this one has character development. It's saying Lobo has a woman named Sheba, the Omegas and where they came from. It has its basic stuff that at least gives it purpose to exist. But in terms of like this plot of, hey, Lobo's going to blow up the planet, we finally tracked him down, it felt like, who cares? That's the biggest thing. There's not a single idea. The planet is going to explode. And I feel there's no stakes in any of this at all. It's not, and art-wise, don't even get me started on that. But for such a story, and like, especially when you have Lobo, whether you like him or hate him, he does have a certain like ability to take any story and just kind of make it something that should be fun and should be like, oh, hey, isn't Lobo kooky and crazy sort of thing? Like, it should be a fun action ride. And the first arc of this entire book it was just a fun action ride constantly. But I feel like under the Rob Liefeld run, it's like slowed down to the point of like, oh, but we have to care about these things that these people are going through. Like, in the one book that shouldn't be a goddamn who cares about the Omegas and their parents and, oh, they did all this stuff. Like, we stopped for that. Just hard, like, not even, oh, we're a character talking to another character that asked about it. No, Zealot just stopped the story and said, here's exactly what happened. Like, that's bad. It's just bad storytelling. I don't know how else to say it. So, no, overall, I'm giving this one a 3. I can't justify high. Like, it's not good. It's just not a good book. And to come from the first arc, whether you like the action movie sense of it or not, it's undoubtedly a step down from there. So 3 for this, and as soon as we can just deal with Lobo, the better. Grifter number 11, written by Rob Liefeld and Frank Tieri, art by Marat Mychaels. Last issue, they were fighting some Damonites, and Grifter has Jedi powers, and then a guy named Singe showed up to attack them. This issue, they fight Singe. Honestly, I could just stop there. Like, you really don't need to know anything else. But to give you even the briefest little intro here, they are fighting Singe. They fire off some shots at it. It's apparently bulletproof. Nico, I believe her name is, comes in. I'm just going to double check on that. Nico, yes. And she tries using the sword. Doesn't work. She gets thrown off as well. So I think, okay, time for me to use my powers. And so he tries. And then, not visually, just through dialogue, they say it doesn't work. So apparently he has an energy field that stops Grifter's powers from working on him. So at this point, Nico comes in with a motorcycle, and she specifically says, I'm sure you've noticed that it was leaking fuel, to which he's then exploded because the bike explodes. And Grifter's like, hey, maybe you should have told us about that. And she's like, sorry, but, you know, he's beaten, and this was the heat of battle. So it's like, all right, no problem, let's get out of here. But then Singe is actually okay the whole time. And Nico and the other guy, Deathblow, they go away from the battle. Grifter's doing this on his own and runs him out into the middle of the woods, to which Grifter's like, now you've fallen into my trap. And he uses his Jedi powers not on Singe, but on the ground around him, and manages to like pick up a whole bunch of rocks and trees and stuff and just throws it onto Singe. And he's like, wow, I really do have a lot of power. I wonder how much this goes for. Why this kills Singe? Genuinely no idea. Especially because I don't think it does. Regardless, at that point, Nico steps up and he's like, wow, all right. You all right, Chosen One? And he's like, yeah, but here's the thing. The Damonites have been ahead of us every step of the way. What do we do? Either they're very smart or we're very stupid. And then Nico shoots Deathblow because apparently she was the mole. She was the traitor inside the group. And she shoots Grifter and knocks him out. And then she picks him up and they go on their way. And also, Singe is still alive. Because of course he is. So we go up to a Damonite ship. And inside there are some men in cloaks who are like, we're so sorry, my lord, but we've looked over the prophecies. No matter how we come at it, the Chosen One always wins. And then they get vaporized. And fucking Hellspont shows up. The Damonite King Lord thing that has yet to make an appearance in this book, but has made an appearance in pretty much every other one. He shows up and he's like, look again. There's got to be a way we can beat him. And then Nico shows up out of the darkness with Singe and Grifter in tow. And it's like, we have him. And Hellspawn's like, hooray! Thank you for proving once again that Hellspawn's rule will not be denied. And that's where we leave off. I am so sick of Hellspawn. Voodoo, Superman, one or two other books outside of that. I'm just... Why? Why are we doing he doesn't even have it. He's in space right now, despite the fact that I think Voodoo specifically said that he is trapped on Earth. Or something. I am so uncaring about this character. Anyway, the book as a whole. Singe is stupid. The reveal of Nico, yeah, okay, I didn't see that coming, but also it wasn't telegraphed in any way. Like, I didn't feel like I was supposed to see it coming. They were like, oh, how are they managing to stay so far ahead of us? Well, I don't know. But you didn't really suggest that one of you guys being an inside agent was really a thing. I mean, I vaguely remember they did, but it doesn't... Like, I never saw anything where it was specifically... There's no possible way that these aliens could have known we were here. Specifically because it seems like the aliens, even before this arc, have always known where they were. Like, they've tracked down Grifter repeatedly. So, I don't know. It's dumb. It's not good. Art-wise, meh. Honestly, it's not the worst, but it definitely has a whole lot of things in here, especially with, like, how people's eyes line up. Like, they're not in a straight line half the time here. So, yeah, no, it's whatever. I give it a 4.5. It's tiny bit on the verge of offensive, not like offensively bad, not like offensive from like a PC standpoint, but it's just on a tiny bit of verge there just because I'm so sick of Hellspawn. Like, give me something more with the Daemonites. You had a whole thing with the Black Curate that sounds like this huge lore thing that I should be super interested in. And then you're like, but what about Flaming Skullhead guy? Now that's a villain. Suicide Squad number 11, written by Adam Glass, art by Carlos Rodriguez. Last issue left off with a Basilisk member dying, even though they took away his means of suicide, and therefore they came to the conclusion that there is a traitor in the Suicide Squad. This issue picks up with Waller interrogating El Diablo, and basically saying, like, El Diablo's like, yeah, no, I looked over him. I took away the cyanide tooth. And she's like, well, you must have missed one. He's like, no, I didn't. There were plenty of people around. Like, one of our guys killed him. And then Waller starts accusing El Diablo of it, but he's like, no, I use fire. That's kind of my thing, not cyanide teeth. And then Waller, like, goes ham on him and, like, shoves a, like, folding metal chair, like, crushing his windpipe a little bit. And she's just pissed. Like, she's not even asking anything. She's just pissed. So then she takes off the chair, says, all right, get a bomb in his neck, let's go. And then we see that the squad is all up on a plane when they wake up. And they're just on a trip somewhere. And specifically, Waller pops on the screen and says, hey, we've got a location for Basilisk Compound. You're going to go in there and assassinate the leader, Regulus. Whoever does the job will get half their sentence knocked off. So we've also got some new members in here to provide backup. And then immediately one of the new members is like, Basilisk lives forever. And she pokes the bomb in her neck and it explodes. And then the entire plane they're on is just like out of the air. And Waller immediately calls up her boss and just like, hey, you know that deniability thing where villains may die in the process? And he's like, yeah. He's like, they might have died in the process. And he's like, okay, go get some more. To which Waller seems shocked that it's not just done with them. So regardless, we see that a lot of them actually did survive the plane thing. And the plane is falling out of the sky, so they throw on some parachutes and start jumping out. And they land in the ocean, come up on the beach shore. And then we start getting like mild characterization for Iceberg, who's like, oh yes, I was a professor before my accident, to which Deadshot immediately is like, shove it. I mean, we're not here for backstories. Where are we? King Shark knows they're in the Gulf of Mexico because he can taste it in the water. And then they start seeing some natives of wherever they're at in the trees. And Black Spider lays down his weapons to show he's not a threat. And El Diablo tries communicating because they're in the Gulf of Mexico. Maybe they speak Spanish. But then they respond in like ancient Mayan. And it turns out this is an uncontacted Mayan tribe that starts leading them through the forest to this massive Mayan civilization that, again, I feel like should have been known about. But regardless, we see that night they're being fed all this food and everyone's like laughing and playing with the Suicide Squad. And then Deadshot's like, all right, we've been here long enough. We got to go. To which everyone is saying like, no, dude, we're staying. And Deadshot threatens them, says he's going to like shoot them if they don't follow orders or whatever. And they're like, dude, why are you so in a hurry to go? Waller, if she thought we were still alive, she would have started like blowing our heads up like very soon afterwards. She thinks we died in that explosion. She's not coming. To which he's like, did you all forget that there's a traitor in our midst here? Like, I'm going to go follow orders because I don't want to die from Waller or the traitor. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Is anybody with me? And pretty much everyone's like, no, nobody's with you. We do get specifically clarification that Harley is not 100% Harleen. She's kind of like splitting the difference back and forth of sometimes it's Harley, sometimes it's Harleen. Right now it's Harley. But then we see Amanda Waller at her desk. She's drunk, face down on her keyboard, and she gets a call from somebody. Not sure who, but she does end the call with, okay, heading home now, love you too, and then hangs up. So then we see Deadshot is saying like, all right, screw all you think you're safe here, but you're not, and I'm not going to be the one who is going to be caught off guard. And then immediately everybody in the squad starts like fighting each other because he accused, I think, Harley of being the traitor, like offhandedly, and then she blames King Shark blames El Diablo, like they all just go off on each other. But before literally anything can happen, they all start passing out, and Deadshot gets hit from behind with like a metal club. And when they all come to, turns out that the Mayans poisoned all their food and like drugged them, knocked them out. And because Deadshot didn't have any, they just took a baseball bat to his head. And they're all going to be used in traditionally offensive Mayan human sacrifice. And that's where we leave off. I'm okay with the idea that, okay, the squad is like away from the eyes of Waller for a while. I like that concept. I think it's got a lot of potential story-wise. There being a traitor in the mist, also like that. I feel like the Mayan backdrop and having the Mayans sacrifice them feels a bit too, I want to say campy. Like, it's just a bit like, if you want to do this whole thing of, oh, there's a traitor in our midst, but then also how do we trust each other, but also we don't even trust our boss. Like, there's a lot of trust things here. And then they just set it on this backdrop of, oh, those kooky natives. Like, I don't know. It feels a little bit too off of the path they were going on there. I did like the part where Iceberg is like, yeah, you know, I was a professor. And Deadshot, knowing that we were about to get a backstory dump, is like, shove it. I don't want to hear it. Let's deal with this story. Like, it's in character, and also, thank you, because I really don't care that much about it. So yeah, no, it's interesting, the traitor plot still. I do like the idea of Waller's plot, whatever she's got going on, of she's got someone at home that she actually does care about. Characterizing her is always an interesting feat, but the specific Mayan thing is kind of for me. So I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 6.5. It's fine. It's not great. It's not blowing me away in any means, but it's okay the whole way through. But I do feel like it's just set up for a future thing more than it is a story on its own. Legion Lost, number 11, written by Tom DeFalco, art by Pete Woods. Last issue left off with the Meta-Americans coming after the Legion and seemingly shooting Timberwolf. And I say seemingly, but they did. This issue has 3 different plots going, so I'm just going to go... Just know that they're cut between each other. constantly, but that's really hard to explain. So I'm just going to say one plot after the other. So Tellus is with Tyrock. He realizes Timberwolf's been shot, and he has Gates teleport Tyrock over to the area where that's going on. And we see that Chameleon Girl, I can never remember. She is up on the rooftop fighting the Meta-Americans. She's turned into this big, like, hulking brute monster thing. And they're like, wow, oh my god, this monster, let's get this thing rounded up. Get behind her. And they're like, dude, I'm sentient. I can understand you. I'm not blindly not listening to you. So very quickly, the one main Meta-American comes in with an American flag like behind him as he jumps in and starts beating up Chameleon Girl. And at that point, Tyrock arrives and they start fighting for like a brief second, but then immediately Tyrock is kicked in the throat by Meta-American. So Chameleon Girl, for some reason, is unable to shapeshift. Tyrock can't use his sonic power, so they have to fight just with their fists as normal. And Meta-American is just all up on like, oh, well, America's faced many enemies that we were not prepared to face, and you're no different. We will overcome you just as all before, blah, blah, blah. And Chameleon Girl is basically saying, like, we're not the enemy. And he's like, then why do you disguise yourself? And he's like, why are you disguising yourself? And he's like, shut up. So they continue to fight. Meta-American and the crew are pretty much getting the upper hand on them the whole way through the fight. And then finally at the very end, they're like, okay, in order to defeat them, Meta-American comes to the conclusion that they care more about each other's well-being than they do their own defensive. So instead of splitting up the team to handle both of them, everyone just attacks Chameleon Girl all at once, gets her severely injured, and then Tyrock lets down his defenses long enough for Meta-American to come in. And someone congratulates Meta-American. He's like, well done for exploiting their weakness. And he's like, no, it was a loathsome strategy, as if he has some level of honor or something. Anyway, plot number 2. So Timberwolf was shot, and Tellus, disguised, and the other guy, the human guy who Timberwolf befriended, they take him to a clinic downtown that basically handles like illegal immigrants and people without insurance and people who are like shot doing illegal things and whatever, and make sure that they can get some medical treatment. And they bring in Timberwolf and try to just want him to be in a medical place, even though his healing factor is pretty much going to take care of it on its own. And throughout the thing, they have Gates go and get Dawnstar and Wildfire back from the Antarctic. They can't find anything of Harvest, though Wildfire's kind of like, hey, Dawnstar, what about us? Maybe we should talk about... And then Gates shows up, and they're like, hey, Timberwolf's been shot, let's go. And he's like, great, thank you, Gates. So they go back to the, the clinic, and now there's like 6 people all in this room looking over Timberwolf, and the nurse is like, all right, screw it, everyone out. Too many people in here. And we see that Timberwolf, in his delirious state or whatever, is having memories of talking to someone named Colonel White back when he was in the future. And there's some big criminal guy who's part of an Echo unit. And apparently the Echo unit, they're people who they wipe the memories of these criminals and then station them back in the past. And they have no memory of like who they are or anything they did. So that's their sentence, is they just are gone from the future. So finally, after some time, Timberwolf wakes up, Gates is by his side, and he comes to the conclusion, he's like, hey, what if we were stationed in an Echo unit? What if we have like an officer looking after us to make sure that we don't like get our maybe that's why we don't remember, like we wouldn't remember it because our memories would be wiped. Like, dear God, how high does this go? And Gates is like, guess people call me paranoid. And then lastly, the final arc is once Dawnstar and Tellus are pushed out of the room, we see, and there's also a little blink of this other thing earlier, there are like corpses that are being completely drained, like of all of their fluids and stuff. And One of them ended up in the clinic, and that's who the doctor was looking at just before Timberwolf came in. And Tellus mentally picked that up, so he brought Dawnstar downstairs to go look at it. They traced the energy signature that it's Alistair, the original villain from the first arc. So they used that to find another body somewhere else in the city, and it is like a corpse that attacked this other random guy walking down the street. And then we see they finally track down this random guy who's there, and Dawnstar goes in first, but Alistair does something, because Alistair is actually inside the body, and he possesses the body of Dawnstar now. And so that's where the issue actually leaves off. Also, there's one page in here of Wildfire flying up above the earth, and he's like, my suit is broken, and there's no way I can fix it here. I will soon dissipate into nothingness. And then he goes back. So, yeah, there's that. So a lot going on. It's fine. It's good. I mean, there's nothing in here that I found particularly, like, bad or whatever, but this did feel very disjointed. Like, I felt like last issue they were really going to focus on the Mid-American thing, but before that's even done, we're going back to the Alistair thing, and we're setting up a new Echo thing. Like he didn't trust the Mid-American plot to be good enough. So, yeah, I'm not going to give that points. I think that's kind of a little bit lame, and that we're just jumping around so much. But I do appreciate that each of the plots is at least being built up, and they're not just randomly like, oh, hey, then this thing. I do think the Echo unit could use a little bit more development, but I think we're probably going to take some time before we get into that. So overall, this is like a 6, maybe 6.5, but I'm going to go with the 6 just because I'm unsure of it. So yeah, nothing more to really say. I don't know which plot's going to get the central focus. I think probably the Echo stuff, but I also don't think... I'm not sure we have a whole lot more of this series after this. I know it's not canceled in the second wave of cancellations yet, but I don't think it continues for much longer. So we'll see what happens by the end. The Ravagers, issue 3, written by Howard Mackie, art by Ian Churchill and Tom Raney. Last issue was its own thing entirely, and we just had a tease of Beast Boy had a dream involving a lot of blood, and Brother Blood was the name being ushered. This issue opens up with Brother Blood. He's talking to some blood witches who give him a prophecy of somebody in the Ravagers will be the key for you to get into the door of all that is created by blood or whatever. They don't say specifically who, but it's someone in the Ravagers. So he calls out to his acolytes and says, all right, find him. He also tacks on morons for some reason. Like, he's very, very annoyed by his own people for some reason. So we cut back to the Ravagers, and we see Caitlin is standing on a cliff, just doing her same thing she's been doing for the past 2 issues of, like, these kids, they're so dangerous, but I had to save them, but what kind of world have I unleashed upon them? But it turns out that they're literally just, like, skinny dipping because, you know, they found a river and they need to get clean because they've been wearing their Ravager outfits for so long. And Caitlin's like, guys, we don't have time for this. We got to deal with stuff. And like, dude, you smelled too. Get in the pool. So Ridge drags her into the pool, and then everyone realizes, seemingly simultaneously, that Ridge, Thunder, and Lightning, their weird little glow Tron pattern things that they got on their clothing, is not actually on their clothing, it's on their skin. And Lightning starts freaking out like, oh god, we're permanently marked of them and all the harvest stuff. And Thunder starts trying to calm her down because, you know, she starts sparking and they're in the middle of water, so clearly she would die if she gets in the water. But then they're like, okay, well, maybe we just need to focus this energy, focus this emotion. To which the blood acolytes show up right then to capture them. And like, perfect timing. So then we got a Beast Boy and Terra plot where they broke into someone's like apartment or something and to steal some of their food. The guy finds them, pulls out a shotgun, and Terra is like, it's 2 against 1, man. Maybe you might want to back down. To which 4 other guys with shotguns show up and just like, you stealing our food? And then they just immediately, Terra starts throwing up earth spikes at them and like lifting them high in the air. And Beast Boy transforms into a wolf and starts attacking one of them. So they get some food, and Beast Boy has another vision of Brother Blood, this time with a whole bunch of different Ravager members like strung upside down, and he's like, okay, that wasn't a dream, that was like a vision. So yeah, we definitely have to go find them now. Cut back to the fight with the Ravagers, and it's basically Ridge and Galen being like, do we know who these guys even are? Are they with Harvest? I don't know. There were a lot of secrets in that group. Anyway, we're going to work on our combos together. And Caitlin picks up Ridge on her back and spins him around and uses his tail to knock over a bunch of people. Meanwhile, Thunder and Lightning are like, oh man, well, it feels good to fight without having someone tell us that we have to fight. We're fighting for ourselves. And yeah, sure, whatever. And then one of the Blood Acolytes finally gets the upper hand on him, and they start also overcoming Caitlin and Ridge, and they're like, oh, there's too many. We can't possibly be able to survive this. To which then Brother Blood finally shows up, and he's like, stop, you idiots. Stop attacking them. Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't know if, like, you guys were you. Here, is anybody hurt? Lightning, you have a slash on your back. Let me just heal that for you. And he just magically takes away her scar and her pain, and Lightning's like, oh my god, I feel amazing. Hey, Alexei, Thunder, you gotta try this. And so he steps up to Brother Blood. We cut over real quick to Tieri and Beast Boy, who are just running through the woods, and Beast Boy gets the scent of blood in a nearby clearing, and we see that there's a whole different group of Blood Acolytes who have a whole bunch of innocent people held hostage, and they're about to sacrifice them and drain them of their blood. To which Beast Boy jumps in and he's like, no! And as he's attacking them, he just starts yelling at Tara of like, the blood, whenever I close my eyes, my memories of my life before, there's always blood. What happened to me? And so, yeah, he clearly has some bad memories of something related to blood, but regardless, Tara's like, they messed with our heads, man. Maybe it's not anything that you actually went through. Maybe it's just something else. And Beast Boy's like, nah, I definitely went through something. And then we cut back to the Ravagers for the final reveal page, and whereas Lightning was, like, healed, and mind you, this entire time, because they were skinny dipping, Ridge, Lightning, and Thunder are all naked. Like, they're all just fighting naked this whole time. And Ridge is just a lizard man, so they didn't even bother censoring anything, because there's nothing there. It's just weird. Anyway, Thunder's being, like, tortured by Brother Blood, and it seems that Lightning doesn't even notice, because she's so, like, wrapped up in her own thing. So, I don't know. I'm interested in the character of Brother Blood. That's about where the positive would end there. Maybe the Beast Boy thing could be cool, but I'm iffy on that. They need to find something better to do with Caitlin, like now, if she's going to be our main narrative centerpiece, because I am so tired already after just 3 issues of like, what have I done to these kids? Like, shut up. Oh, yeah, no, we get it. Harvest did terrible things, and you were technically a part of Harvest, and then you unleashed them on. I don't care. Find a new thing to say. I feel like after the first 2 issues, that little mini arc there, you should have immediately switched it to like, but we'll find a way to live. And then you just did that. You stopped opening every issue with like, oh, but these kids. So yeah, no, it's a, I don't know. I'd say 5.5. It probably deserves a little bit higher than that, but it is still, in my eyes, working off the culling. Like, the fact that it spun out of that automatically gives it some original sin that it has to repent for severely. I'm interested in the Brother Blood stuff. He seems like an interesting character in that he is a charismatic cult leader. Could be cool, but in terms of the actual narrative itself, and also just like, it felt so cheap that all the characters were like naked the whole time. It felt like, oh, how do we sell this to 12-year-olds? I know. Stop. Demon Knights number 11, written by Paul Cornell, art by Diogenes Neves and Robson Rocha. Last issue we left off with the gang coming across seemingly zombie King Arthur, and then they all get transformed into horrible beasts and monsters. This issue picks up with the only one being unturned being Xanadu, and she's like, oh god, what has happened to all of you? And she starts like using her magic to try to push King Arthur back. But then we find out that Al-Jabir is actually like super smart, and he's like, actually what he's saying is stay back, like get away, because there was a thing in our spell that basically what turns out to be is that the spell makes everybody their most idealized version of themselves in some capacity, like still monstrous, but like Al-Jabir is nothing but his brains. Etrigan is a giant demon king. Horsewoman is a literal horse woman. And Vandal Savage is still Vandal Savage. Like, he's still himself, just slightly better looking in his words. Shining Knight is also like a true knight. And Exaristos is the one that got like the weird side in that she's like this misshapen, horrible, like grotesque monster. And they reason out like everyone else got how they feel about themselves like on the inside and like wanting to exacerbate that. Exaristos has some level of like hating herself, and therefore she sees that within herself. So anyway, some wolves start attacking them, and Etrigan just straight up literally like incinerates them, because it's not just a visual enhancement, like he is genuinely like Demon King levels here. And immediately Xanadu's like seeing King Arthur wants everyone to follow her, but they're like, Etrigan is like maybe not on our side anymore, because if he's a Demon King, he has no real reason to stick around. But she yells at him, just saying like, come on, Etrigan, that's not the demon I know. And Etrigan's like, all right, whatever, you guys go, I'll be up behind, I'm just going to kill some more things for a while. So they all go inside this cave, and there is a fountain in there that King Arthur's pointing to, and they basically reason out that you touch the water, you turn back to normal. To which everyone in the group is like, no, I love this. This is amazing. We're going to stay like this forever. And then King Arthur just like turns a little knob on the wall, and the ceiling starts cracking open, and they're all drenched in water anyway. To which they're all like, okay, it was probably for the best, so thank you for freeing us of that spell, but I'm going to take some time for myself to get over the fact that I'm not as cool as I was. And specifically, Etrigan is super pissed off about it. He's like, I was a Demon King, I'll kill you, Arthur. To which we see the water also fixed Arthur, and that he was under a spell as well, so he's back to being normal Arthur as well. And then Arthur explains, like, yeah, no, there's a tower over there, and it's light. If it shines on you, it transforms you into that and basically distracts you from like anything you were trying to do by giving you your heart's desire. However, it does corrupt over time and eventually turns you into just those like beasts. So yeah, that's why you can't get hit by it. Additionally, they ask him like, hey, did you make it to Avalon? Were you over there? And he's like, yeah, I was over there, and I served quite some time over there, but the reason I'm called the once and future king is that if Britain's in trouble, I'll come back, and I sensed Britain was in trouble, so I found a way out of Avalon. I wouldn't be able to get back in, but I found a way out. And they're like, sweet, that's exactly what we need to hear. We're trying to get into Avalon in order to save Merlin. And he's like, oh, shit, Merlin died? That sucks. And he's like, yeah, sorry about that, but if you found a way out, then you can guide us on the way out, and we'll get him out of there. So he explains the tower a bit more, and the tower and its light, it does that. But for him specifically, because he is so in love with Britain, it stopped him from falling prey to the normal curse. So instead, he just got like zombified, but he was still strong in spirit. So he tells them like, all right, well, let's go save Merlin. I am with you, you knights of the demon. So they all start attacking the tower, and they realize like, okay, we're not going to be able to do a ground attack like you did before because we'll be hitting instantly. But however, we have enough ways that we can all fly in. So they like mount onto the Pegasus, and Etrigan flies, and Xanadu uses magic, and they all fly in against the tower. To which a giant clay/rock monster starts attacking them. And Exaristos is like, finally, we've been against so many magic things. I haven't had anything to punch in a while. So they get into a genuine fight with it. Xanadu and Al-Jabir reason out that the weakness of the monster should be water because it's made of earth. So they throw water at it. It starts to disintegrate, and the whole group runs its way into the tower, and they manage to make it past all the quote-unquote traps. I say that because the narration picks up saying like, ah, yes, you thought that you could, like, I made this difficult enough that you wouldn't think that it is a trap for you to come into the tower, when in actuality, it totally is a trap. So now you are coming into my domain, and we see that the narrator is Morgan Le Fay, who I believe... So a reveal in this issue earlier that I skipped over accidentally is that Xanadu is a half-sister of Arthur, and that they were born of this woman who is like a fairy or something like that, and that's why she has some magical properties to her. But Morgan Le Fay is also another one of the sisters of Xanadu. So they're all magic. That's the basic gist of it. Anyway, I like it. I think it was solid. I think that the transforming into monsters thing, while an interesting concept, probably wasn't explored well enough, but I'm willing to just give it the pass on that because, got to move on with the story. The Morgan Le Fay thing I like because it fits in with the whole Merlin and there's a bigger plot going on. I'm down with all that. Seems interesting enough. I do vaguely remember Merlin dying by Daemonite hands, though, so I'm not entirely sure what Morgan Le Fay has to do with that, but regardless, it's fine. It's a perfectly good issue. Art is fantastic the whole way through. It's the explaining issue more than anything else. Of, here's King Arthur, let's give a little bit on him. So overall, I give this one I give it a 7.5. It's good. It's a solid issue. Not great in that it's just kind of doing the parts it had to in terms of getting things explained, but it is perfectly serviceable and perfectly fine. And the art brings it to an extra level as well because it's fantastic looking the whole way through as well. Frankenstein, Agent of S.H.A.D.E, number 11, written by Matt Kindt, art by Alberto Ponticelli. Last issue, we had Frankenstein looking for traitors, getting an informant, the informant saying something about it, Leviathan, and then because it's in some weird upside-down alternate dimension thing, Frankenstein was about to fall through the portal, uncloaked, and it would have killed him. Also, he was having flashes of his previous life or whatever. So this issue picks up, and we see that as Frankenstein was about to crash down into the water, Nina came up with her jetpack thing that allowed them to be enclosed in the protective bubble or whatever. And basically, Nina took a lot of damage from that action because if you go through this thing without proper gear, you're being torn out from Adam. They have two people, clearly not at the proper gear, so Nina got pretty hurt through that. But then they fell through the water and then came out the other side where Frankenstein is immediately like, all right, get me in contact with Father. Talks to Father Time and says, heard something about Leviathan. We're going to go figure that out now. Nina's hurt. Let her, send the mummy and have him pick up her because she's not fit for this. And at that point, Frankenstein explains that he looked into Leviathan and saw that it had a migration pattern and it was set to come up for air, right where they are right now, in any time now. And as they're speaking, it comes up for air. And realizing that he can't leave Nina behind, Frankenstein picks her up, follows her over to the thing's blowhole, and then they jump inside. All this while, Frankenstein keeps on having flashes in his head of a boat and ships and stuff like that. So then we follow inside the Leviathan. Nina and Frankenstein come across some bugs and they have to attack them. And as they make their way deeper and deeper in, he's like, I'm sorry that I brought you along on this. She's like, no, it's cool. I just want to know how you're feeling. I just want to have a talk with you. And before they can, they stumble across this big city in the middle of the Leviathan. And it's this is just a normal, it's just a normal small town sort of setting. What in the heck is this? And as they make their way through, they see a bunch of people, just regular people walking around. But they find a S.H.A.D.E safe house within the thing. It's marked with S.H.A.D.E markings or whatever. So they break in and they are just holding out there for a little while and they chat, and Frankenstein explains, I'm having visions from the memories of my body parts. I'm not Frankenstein. I am Frankenstein's monster. I don't have a name. I go by Frankenstein, but I may as well be called Hellspawn or Fiend or Abomination or just it. I'm not my own thing. And Nina just straight up says, look, these memories, these things or whatever, you see that they are, because Frankenstein was also made up of like parts of murderers and psychopaths and like rabid dogs and stuff like that. And he thinks that he is the sum of his parts. But Nina explains like, no, you're able to recognize this and see the evil, but then also recognize the good in you as well. You are more than the sum of your parts. And Frankenstein's like, yeah, okay, like, thanks. You say the right words, but like, it's not what we're here to do. We're here for a mission. We have to find Satan's ring, and we're gonna figure out what's up with this Leviathan. So they Frankenstein puts on this disguise gear called Dr. Hyde, which allows you to look human, but then makes you angrier the longer you wear it. And we see somebody is watching him through some screens or something. And he goes down to the local diner, and he just goes up and talks to one of the locals, saying like, hey, can you help me load something up in my trunk? And then he grabs the person and throws him up against the wall, being like, what is this place? Where's the Leviathan? What's going on? And the guy explains like, we're all S.H.A.D.E agents. Everyone in this place is a S.H.A.D.E agent. This is where they send S.H.A.D.E agents who like know too much and are forced into retirement. Like, they don't kill us. They just send us here. And we live out the rest of our days unable to escape. Like, eventually this Leviathan will die, and then we'll all die with it. But that doesn't happen for like 1,000 years. So we're all just stuck here. And Frankenstein is like, okay, well, in that case, I'm going to go ahead and take down this Leviathan. So at that point, the person watching on the screens, Father Time as well, are like, crap. No, Frank. Don't take, like, they can't get in contact with him, but like, no, Frank, don't take down the Leviathan. It's, gosh, damn it. And the guy who's watching him is like, oh my God, he's going to kill my Leviathan. And we see him standing amongst a whole bunch of screens screaming. So, yeah, I'm not entirely sure what is going on here. I was a little bit confused with the whole Satan's ring thing last issue, just because with the memory flashes, that seemed to be like, not the A plot, but at least the part that I was supposed to care about more. But now it seems like that was all just lead up to have Nina do this, like, heart to heart with him, saying like, no, you're not a monster, you're your own person, sort of thing. And that's fine, I don't mind that, but because we had to keep dealing with that, I don't feel like I got a proper explanation as to what is actually going on. There's a traitor, we got that. It has something to do with Satan's ring, but now all of a sudden we've pivoted to the informant on Satan's ring and the traitors is in Leviathan, so Frankenstein wants to destroy the Leviathan. I'm unclear as to where the plot is really moving here. There is one cute little throwaway line here of that this particular S.H.A.D.E agent that he is interrogating found a island full of half robot, half animal creatures. And that's actually a reference to My Greatest Adventure, the Robot Man's part of that story, which was also written by Matt Kindt. So having a little fun with his own stories, I suppose. Overall, I'm going to go ahead and give this one a 6.5. While the story within its own issue is completely like, okay, I get it. When looking at it in tandem with the last issue, I feel like the plot is getting lost somewhere along the way. It's just a little bit like, are we dealing with the traitor thing? Are we dealing with the sea monster thing? Are we dealing with the Frank has memories thing? I don't know what we're doing here. The only connecting thread is the Frank has memories thing, but like, is that the important part? That felt like the B plot. So, I don't know. 6.5. Hopefully it can pick up a little bit from there. Art's good though. Art is very good throughout. Resurrection Man number 11, written by Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning, art by Jesus Saiz and Javier Pina. Last issue left off with both Heaven and Hell agreeing to give Mitch some time to sort out his affairs and whatnot and figure out about his past. And then they track on to the coordinates of Daryl, I think it was like transhuman something, and they're after him. So this issue picks up in Viceroy, South Carolina, the home of a whole bunch of stuff that they spend a whole page gushing over, but most of all, the 108-year-old Soda Cola bottling factory, because Soda Cola. So we open up with a tour of Soda Cola, and the guy's like, I'm Jerry, and this is Soda Man, our very own mascot and superhero. Not actually a superhero, but just like, a guy. So they walk through and they're like, okay, here's all this bottling stuff, and it used to be that this was all done by human hands, but now for sanitary reasons and because we're in the future, we do it all with robots. And someone chimes up and they're wearing sunglasses. So very suspicious. It's like, can we get into the actual bottling plant itself? And he's like, nope, for sterility reasons, we can't let anyone in there. Now, who wants to go to the taste testing part? And we see this woman and this man, both wearing sunglasses, look at each other. And cut to a few hours later, everyone's leaving. And we see a woman cleaning up at the end of the day. She pulls out a trash can and sees, wouldn't you know it, some wigs and sunglasses and whatnot. And he's like, oh, man, it's so weird what people throw out nowadays. And then out of the shadows, we see a shadow creep out, and it's Mitch using his powers to block him and Kim. So they make their way through the soda cola lab because they're like, look, it says right here. We're looking around, we're trying to find it. But all they see are like more bottles, more stuff like that. And as Mitch is exploring, he gets more and more like little memories. And by the way, it's transhuman. He gets more little memories. He's like, I worked here. Like, this was my first job way back when I was a teenager. Like, I remember this. And so he's looking around, and then they're like, look, there's nothing here. Like, we can't see anything inside the building. So finally Kim touches one of the walls of the building itself, and she gets this spark of like, wait a minute, look at that. And we look up, and this giant spiral glass tower is suddenly there that nobody saw before. And it's like, I don't know how to explain that. Maybe it's like special paint or something. Regardless, they took a key card or a transhuman's biometric signal off of the thing and manages to make its way into the building. And then Mitch just starts like remembering the codes. He just starts like typing it in the keypad, and it's like, I don't even know how I knew that, but I knew that. So they make their way inside. They take the elevator up. When it opens up, there's some guards waiting up there, and they're like, huh, that's weird. And there's no one in the elevator, and it's pitch black. And then the shadows reach out, and Mitch takes them, the guards out, makes his way over to a computer terminal, finds out where Daryl's being kept, and then immediately just goes there, takes out the guards, and says, hey, Daryl, we're here for you. And he's like, Mitch, shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. I'm here as bait. I told you I was a supervillain when we first met. Never trust a supervillain. And he blasts Mitch and away with like an energy weapon, and then all the alarms start going off. And Director Hooker is over the line saying like, all right, Mitch is here. We literally left bait for him, and somehow he still got the drop on us, so do not go in unarmed. The body doubles are after him. And then we see Director Hooker gets a call from his boss, and he's like, hey, I'm suiting up to go get Shelly. Don't make me come down there and do it myself. Like, his boss is coming down to see what's going on here. And it's just a guy in shadows with a whole bunch of like tubes coming out of him. But anyway, Mitch and them, they're just fighting off Daryl, fighting off the guards, fighting off the body doubles. The body doubles, though, like, get the upper hand. They got guns trained on Kim and Mitch. And whereas Kim's fighting one of them hand to hand after she knocks the gun out of him, Mitch is just throwing up his shadow shield so the bullets don't hit him from the other body double. But then Kim takes a solid hit from the body double, which causes him to lash out. He throws one of the body doubles aside, and the other one just tackles him out the window. And there's this beautiful shot of, remember, this building is not like normally seen, so it's just this sky, and then all of a sudden there's a square with two bodies coming out of it and like broken glass just in the middle of the sky. It's wonderfully surreal. So they're fighting on the way down. Mitch, he hits the ground first. He dies on impact. One of the body double that tackled him out just like snaps her neck back into place and says like, boy, it must suck to actually die, Mitch. Anyway, someone get down here before he wakes up. But he wakes up too soon, and now he has like energy vision power. And there's this beautiful thing here of he blasts the body double. Body double says, screw you. To which he says, no, screw you. So that happened. But anyway, she manages to get behind him. Gets him like in a headlock so he can't look back at her. And then they call in like a matter transporter thing, which the shock of him having gone through that is enough to knock him unconscious. So as soon as he gets back, they inject him with a little bit of a sedative, and then they're like, all right, Director Hooker, all yours. This only has 2 issues left, issue 12 and 0 issues, so I am very intrigued to seeing how it ends. I like that they brought back Daryl, and they didn't make it a thing of like, Mitch, my old friend, like they had a little hint there. Everyone in this is so duplicitous, but it doesn't ever feel cheap. when someone betrays someone else. Like, it's very much a thing of you never know where anyone's allegiances lie, which I feel is a very good parallel with, like, okay, Mitch can't remember anything either, so he's having to go off this blind trust of certain people and then distrust of others. I like it. Personally, I think it's a very well-written series. So overall, I would give this one I give it a 7.5, and the only reason that I don't give it an 8 is that it does at times just feel like an extended fight scene. Like, as much as I do love the lines of screw you, no, screw you, like, it is still just one full page to get that dialogue out, and it was all fighting the entire time. Like, everything from the moment they got Daryl to the end of the issue was just one long fight scene. And for something this close to the end, I think I would have liked a little bit more of the exposition. I'm sure we'll get the full drop on that next issue, but just something I would have liked a little bit here. So 7.5, still very solid. Swamp Thing number 11, written by Scott Snyder, art by Marco Rudy. Last issue left off with Anton Arcane seemingly killing Swamp Thing, Alec Holland, while he was resting, and coming after Abigail with a whole swarm of zombie guys. And this issue picks up immediately afterwards with Abigail being like, nope, get away. I'm not, get back, all of you. And Anton's like, hey, no love for your uncle? And Abigail immediately starts with the gun and just trying to shoot as many zombie people around as she can. And they're all swarming. They're all coming after her. And Anton keeps on taunting like, you know, this reminds me of all the times you tried to run away from home. And each and every time, I always got you back. So he's revealing how he's managing to be here now. And he's like, hey, turns out I'm now the avatar of the rot. It's true. I'm in charge of the rot. Isn't that great? And all of these people, all of the unmen I have here, they were not connected to the rot the way that we are, but they worshipped it, and now they're rewarded with unlife, or whatever they want to call it. So he knocks out Abigail, picks her up, and starts carrying her out of the cabin. And all the animals are saying, wake up, like as it walks away, until finally it manages to reach Alec, and Alec's now inside of the green, and he's surrounded by itty-bitty little like Swamp Thing looking people, and it turns out that this is the Parliament. He said before how he reached through the green and was trying to save the Parliament from destruction, and this is they're basically children now. It's like, yeah, no, we're still tiny, we're still growing, but we are still alive, all thanks to you, and as such, we repaid the favor. When Anton tried to kill you, we saved your life as well, so you are okay. And basically, they're like, here's the deal. Anton took the witch lady, and he's going off to do whatever, but the main concern here is he knows that we're here now, and that can't be left up to him, because otherwise he'll come back and kill us, so you definitely need to take care of him. He's like, shut up. I'm going to take care of Anton. But if you ever call her a witch again, I will come back here and burn you myself. And I'm like, damn, Swamp Thing. So Abigail starts waking up, and we see that Anton has made his way over to this portal leading into the rot dimension. And she kicks out of Anton's grasp, and he places a hand on her shoulder, and then we see that a big like bite mark has been taken out of her shoulder, and he has little mouths on each of his hands in order to devour things. And at that point, Swamp Thing shows up, lands a solid punch, and says like, all right, it ends here, let's do this. And Anton's like, oh, this hasn't even begun yet. So the unmen start attacking Swamp Thing, and Abigail's like freaking out, trying to help. He's like, Anton, stop, this is whatever. And Anton's like, oh, he's only a man underneath all those leagues. Crush his bones, pull out his eyes. But then Swamp Thing like causes a bunch of spikes and like thorns to pop out of him, and they impale all the unmen. To which Swamp Thing's like, I am unimpressed, Anton. I expected more. So show me what you got. And so then they start getting into a fight, and the paneling here is just fantastic of showing like how visceral of a fight it is. Until Swamp Thing finally starts lopping off arms. And he just tackles Anton to the ground, saying, like, time to put you back in the dirt. But then he reveals some of the new tricks he has. And every time that he wounds Anton, it just turns into a new mouth that's able to devour things. And now he's got mouths like in his stomach, on the side of his head and whatever. And Swamp Thing's like, he manages to trap Swamp Thing's arms within his own stomach, and he starts devouring them. But then at that point, Abigail, who's been left to her own devices, pulls out a gun and just blows Anton's brains out the side of his head. And he's like, yeah, I don't need my rot powers to do that. So Anton, still alive, because of course he is, he's like, all right, I'll see you guys later. I'm going to go hop into this rot portal and recuperate. But I'll be back again soon. And Abigail tells him, like, hey, don't follow him. Leave him be. We shouldn't go in there, because Abby is getting these visions of like something. As she sees a nightmare, but we can tell that it's the future in some regard, because we see the Daily Planet globe and we see some other stuff, and it's just everything is dead. Like Poison Ivy is on the ground just screaming out in pain. Everything is gone. And Alex like, hey, maybe we should step away from the portal, Abigail. But then a voice across from the portal speaks to him, and it's Buddy Baker, a.k.a. Animal Man, saying, sorry, Alec, we got to go into the portal. We got to go together now. And he's with his wife and his daughter and Socks the cat. And officially, this is the last issue before the event Rot World kicks off, with the 2 prologue issues taking place in Animal Man and Swamp Thing in that order next month. So we have new event, baby. Technically, this event feels like it's been going since the beginning of Swamp Thing and Animal Man, because it's so integral to the plots they're telling, but technically this is where the event actually goes now. So I am very intrigued. I like the Anton stuff. I think it's drawn extremely well. The art is very graphic, but also it just keeps that same sort of vibe that the whole Swamp Thing's been going on, of not quite realism, but just grotesque enough that you're like, yeah, no, I get it. Honestly, I can't fault this issue for very much. The only thing I can really particularly say is that there's a couple, like every page in here on its own feels necessary, but sometimes the actions within those pages feel a bit stretched out. So like Swamp Thing is attacked by the Unmen, and that takes 2 pages for him to just throw out his spikes and say, not that much of a big deal. Like it just feels a little bit slow down. I like the pace. I'm all good with it. And especially if they knew that they needed to end at this point, I understand them having to slow it down a little bit, but having seen the kind of stuff that they've mapped out before in terms of just beautiful page layouts and stuff, I can't help but think maybe there was a bit more of something that could be done here. Like the last issue, it spent the whole time like bouncing back and forth between Anton talking to a like Swamp Thing in the ground to the story itself. So this one just felt a little bit slower paced. Not inherently a bad thing, but just I felt like there could have been something more. Very nitpicky, not at all a big deal. Still giving this one an 8. It's fantastic. And I would, if you haven't read all of Animal Man and Swamp Thing, or heard me talk about it up until now, please go back and check that out, because it is going to be crucial moving into Rot World. The S.H.A.D.E, number 10, written by James Robinson, art by Fraser Irving. Last issue we left off with the S.H.A.D.E being captured by these weird Egyptian god things that are being controlled by Dudley Caldecott and Miles St. Aubrey, I believe his name is, and saying his powers don't work. This issue is the explanation. This issue is quite literally like 3/4 of the issue is just explaining. So I'm going to give the explanation to you, and then once we hit the back half, we'll pick up with the plot. But the explanation basically comes down to, way back in the day, these 3 gods ruled over Egypt, and they were ruling over as tyrants, and then all the people got fed up and they started trying to attack the gods, but they were all powerful until finally either a group of mages or a singular powerful mage rose up and bound the gods within some object or something like that. Then these guys, Caldecott and St. Aubrey, got their hands on it, and now they control the gods. I do want to say that during this entire thing, it's not just a straight explanation from Caldecott or St. Aubrey. It's being bounced back and forth of like S.H.A.D.E being able to figure out the obvious stuff and just like taunting them with the fact of like, yeah, no, you're very obvious. And Aubrey and Caldecott kind of just like bragging the whole time. It's done in a conversational style, and it really does work, but it's really hard for me to recap in that way without stopping to be like, and then they said, and then they said, and then they said. So just trust my calling of that it works like that. So anyway, S.H.A.D.E just wants to know, all right, what happened to my powers? Why don't they work? And they're like, well, it's the gods. Clearly, it's like, yes, no, clearly it's the gods. I understand that, but like, why specifically don't my powers work? And they're like, well, we tried probing into like exactly how the gods work, and frankly, we came up pretty empty. Last time we tried, we actually killed one of them. And you notice, yeah, there were 3 gods, now there are only 2 here. But that was back in 1936. And then one of the gods chimes up saying, like, my name is Nut, this is Fawn, and my husband was the one who was killed. And S.H.A.D.E's like, are you guys gods? Are you star travelers? What are you? And he's like, yes, no, all the above, none of the above, whatever. And St. Aubrey breaks up the conversation like, no, all right, hey, stop giving info. We're not doing that right now. And they explain how, yes, it was Caldecott's father who actually came across the thing in Egypt that allowed them to do this stuff. And basically they're like, yeah, no, basically their entire power, the whole thing we're using them for, because we don't use them to like smite people. We use them because their energy gives us like fortune. Like we're just lucky whenever we're around them. And he's like, well, why do you need them? Why do you need to keep them hidden then? And he's like, because we're lucky in illegal stuff. And S.H.A.D.E's like, drugs? And he's like, drugs, children, germs, weapons, you name it. And S.H.A.D.E's like, oh, for God's sakes, you're just irredeemable, aren't you? And they're like, yeah, well, here's the thing. We realized that we would make a whole lot of money if we could get terrorism to be back on the up. So we funded a group of nationals to cause this big terrorism thing today at 3 o'clock. So that's going to be happening. And then S.H.A.D.E starts to like fade out into shadow, and he's able to use his powers. And then St. Aubrey's like, hey, why aren't you stopping him? And the god's like, he's too powerful. You're keeping too much of our power from us. And so St. Aubrey calls over to an assistant nearby, like, give them a bit of power. Just a tiny bit. Not a lot. Just enough to stop him, which is enough to pull S.H.A.D.E back in. And he's like, so that's the device. Thank you for showing that to me. And then they go on and say, like, okay, so you're saying that you're part of this group. Just some group. It doesn't even have a name. Do you, like, is it just the 2 of you? Because that's all I've seen. Is there a bunch? And he's like, oh, yeah, no, there's tons of them. Like, we have all the heads of industry in our group. That's how they managed to get so lucky. That's why they're able to succeed. So you will soon discover what happens. And they take S.H.A.D.E and they unbind him, but they walk him down this path. And there's just all these naked men, to which S.H.A.D.E makes the comment, wow, there's a lot of male nudity around here. I'm a bit scared as to what's going to happen next. And S.H.A.D.E starts to, again, slowly fade away, to which they give the god a bit more power in order to keep it under control. And S.H.A.D.E kicks back into his normal thing, and he's just like, yeah, all right, so what am I doing here? You here to try to kill me? It's like, no, we know you're like immortal. We're not trying to kill you. We are going to run some tests and stuff on you to try to figure out like what's going on. But right now, we're here for a different human sacrifice. It's just some random streetwalker we picked up off the street. Like, technically, we should be using virgin blood, but that's kind of hard to come by, so we're going to kill her. And S.H.A.D.E's like, Dudley, come on, man, not an innocent. Even I think I kill with a purpose here, and I was a villain for a while. And he's just like, no, this is how things are, grandfather, I'm sorry. And then S.H.A.D.E starts to fade away again, to which they give the god more power. And then S.H.A.D.E finally sighs, and he's like, maybe I shouldn't have been your biggest concern, because you just gave those gods a lot of power to stop me, and I know that they're not happy you took it away. To which point everyone realizes, oh shit, we don't have control over them anymore. We gave them back their power. So the gods immediately turn on St. Aubrey and just crush him, and then they start exploding out through the roof of the building. And S.H.A.D.E is left sitting there next to Dudley, and he's like, oh, Dudley, what have you done? As the gods are just laying siege to this city outside. And that's where it ends. I like it. I definitely do. I remember so little of the first few issues and like the stuff that led us to get here that honestly it doesn't really matter anymore. Like I recognize, like, they explained the part of Deathstroke came and attacked S.H.A.D.E because he didn't want S.H.A.D E to be investigating in their affairs anyway. So, like, somehow that was supposed to throw them off the trail, and they remarked that was pretty stupid. Like, that's the only thing that kind of got me interested in it at all. So, no, there was. I know there's a through line here, and if I went back and read it, I'd be able to pick up, like, okay, they're talking about this person, this person, this person. It's the issue of a mystery being spread this far out. I do enjoy it. I think it's solid, this issue specifically, because it's the explaining issue, but they do it in such a just conversational way. It doesn't feel like a villain is just like bragging and just saying all their secrets. It genuinely feels like S.H.A.D E is just smart mouthing the answers out of them. And it's written very well in that regard. So overall, I give this issue a 7.5. Honestly, you know what? I'm giving it the 8. The art manages to bump it up. The art is fantastic the whole way through. So I give it an 8. And it feels like the penultimate issue. It feels like things are going to wrap up next issue, but there is actually 2 more. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do with that. But no, solid throughout, and I am interested in seeing how this whole Egyptian god thing wraps up. And that's it. That's all the comics that came out July 11th, 2012, and I really don't have anything to say here at the end. I mean, I've looked at last week's comics, this week's comics, next week's comics, and it's all very generic and normal for the company. I feel like once we get to the 0-issue month, that's going to be something to talk about. But for now, it's just moving on, getting to the 1-year mark. So let me tell you what's coming out next week. Next week, we have, in July 18th, 2012, 13 comics. And they are the number 11 issues of Batwoman, Birds of Prey, Catwoman, Nightwing, Red Hood and the Outlaws, Supergirl, Green Lantern Corps, Captain Atom, DC Universe Presents, Justice League, Wonder Woman, Blue Beetle, and Legion of Superheroes. Woo. Got the whole spread there. Again, nothing really interesting to talk about. So, if you have any thoughts on any of the books coming out next week, last week, any week, go ahead and hit us up on Twitter at DC Comics Podcast. All one word, DC Comics Podcast. Additionally, we have a Patreon at Mild Fuzz TV. All one word. Go ahead and give us $1 so we can take your hard-earned dollar. That's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, doing whatever you do during these shows, and always try to remember that if it ain't broke, don't fix it.